You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Well, it finally happened. Welcome back to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. I'm Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic. And yeah, Fran, it did happen. We finally got our first one-star review. But Fran, I do have to bring up, you said you weren't going to read any negative reviews, and now you told me that we had a one-star review. So what happened?
There was nothing to read. They just left the one star. Kind of cowardly, yeah. You know. If you disliked it that much,
yeah, we want some constructive criticism here. We want to know what we can do better.
Yeah, if you honestly think it's a one star, I would want to know that.
Yeah, we can only speculate, and I've came up with a list of things that could be why they left that 1-star review. I think number one is probably because you told the people where you're from too many times.
That's true. On every episode, I have mentioned that I am from Levittown, Pennsylvania.
Number two was that you tell everyone how you got into the industry and go through that whole story.
I do.
You've done that quite a few times.
I do. But, I'm figuring maybe there are people that don't listen to every episode.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe... Yeah.
That was just number two. This is a list.
All right,
it's not just one or two things.
All right, go ahead.
Number three, and this is probably my winner, is that you keep saying that you haven't seen pheasants in a long time.
Oh.
And I had to tell Fran off the air that pheasants aren't actually a native bird.
Yeah, I had no idea. But first of all, please tell me on the air, call me out. Because the one thing, if you wanted to add another thing to your list, one thing that I say often is that I'm not an expert on anything.
Yes,
so this is still, I know enough about a lot of things to be dangerous. And it's still a learning experience for me. So I had no idea. I really had no idea until you mentioned it to me.
Even growing up, as I've mentioned a bunch of times, I like to hunt and fish. And like you always hear about pheasant hunting. And I've been pheasant hunting a couple times. And it was always stock birds because there aren't really any wild birds. We'll just say they weren't native. But there aren't any wild birds around. And really, I was surprised to find out that they were never a native species. They were brought over as a game species from China.
Yeah,
and they really become naturalized, and there's a really proud and rich heritage around pheasants, especially in like South Dakota. South Dakota is known for its pheasant hunting, so it's amazing that they were never really native species. But I guess they haven't caused any issues.
But the funny thing is, until you told me, and then I went and researched, I didn't realize that they weren't really introduced till much later. I think it was like the 1880s that they started to colonize.
Yeah.
Is that the correct terminology? Colonize.
I guess we can use it. But that is my guess as to why we got a 1-star review.
Those are all very possible. I once, and I'm not going to say who the individual is, but I once did a talk for Pinelands Nursery about rain garden plants. It was a rain garden certification class done through Rutgers. And I had photos of our rain garden here as one of the slides in the presentation. And I had someone give me an absolutely horrible review because there was Echinacea in our rain garden, and that wasn't a true native. It was a introduced native. And they totally glossed over all the great content down to that one thing that I didn't even talk about. It just happened to be in a photo, and I said that we used it.
Going off topic and talk about Echinacea, we've talked about it. I'm pretty sure we talked about it on here before.
We mentioned that it's when it was,
and I really want to get into it Kelly Gill because she's one of the people who told me how it's something that they use primarily because people know it. You can go to someone who likes to garden but may not know native plants, and they go down the plant list of what they're prescribing and looking at penstemon and rudbeckia and all these different things, and they see Echinacea and they say, oh, I know what that is. And then they assume everything else is by default good.
Yes.
Because it fits that gardening model that they're used to.
Now, I will say my other flub during that talk was when I was talking about wetland indicator status, I had mentioned it was done by the USDA, which it wasn't. It was commissioned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and this person happened to be an employee of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
So you already started off on a bad foot.
Yes.
And then they just wanted to really
load
it on.
They completely ripped me apart. Now, those two things aside, I think there was a lot of stellar content. So, and I kind of thought it was funny. And I think the same thing about this situation. Like, I'm not really obsessing over it, but I think it's kind of funny because we've done 23 episodes of the podcast. 20 of the 23 we've had guests. So there's only been 3 episodes just been you and I. These guests have been nonprofit organizations that do wonderful work, or they've been authors. So if you're giving a 1-star review over the body of work, which we've had that many episodes when they gave it, you're not really an environmentalist as far as I'm concerned, because you're a troll. Because, and the way I look at it is, if we're getting trolls, we're doing something right.
Yeah. Isn't that like the Howard Stern model? Was you want people to be angry because they're listening too, and they're probably listening longer than the people who are.
Exactly. So I know that we're doing something right because our listens just keep getting better and better. They've been going through the roof. So, I don't want to lend to the negativity. We're going to focus on all the great listeners
which we have many.
We have a lot, and they listen to most episodes or every episode, and they give us great feedback via reviews, or they're members of the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook page. So I want to thank them for pushing us up, not that one person trying to pull us down.
Yeah, we really can't thank everyone enough. It's I don't even know how many months have we been doing this? 6,
Since
7?
February.
Yeah,
so 8 months. 8 months.
8 months.
Wow.
So it took us a while to get going. Once we started going, it really took off. Here's my thing I always bring up a lot is we thought we were going to have like 20 people listen, and we were surprised at it was, I don't even know how many times that. Way more.
We're in the hundreds within the first couple hours, which is great to see, and it surprises us every time I look at the stats to see that we're doing something right. Like, I feel that we're in the right thing. Now, everyone, you're getting stuck with an episode of The Buzz today, and just the two of us, because we had like a
little scheduling
conflict. So we do have some great guests coming up soon. We have Michelle de Blasio from the Nature Conservancy. In the next couple weeks, we have Claudia West coming on to talk about her book. And
we just talked to Mike Van Cleef.
The Invasive Species Strike Team, which I think is a great direction to go in, because we've talked about all the great things, but we really haven't talked about how to control the bad things that are the enemies.
And really, if you're going into the winter and over the winter months, if you can tolerate going outside a little bit, that's a great time, as long as you can identify them, to start controlling invasives before they have time to go out in the spring and summer and then set seed and proliferate even further. If you can get on them in the winter, then you're helping without causing too much damage to what's growing actively at that time too.
And next month we also plan on starting our roundtable series, which will have future guests and past guests all together at one time to discuss a single topic. So we're looking forward to that as well. So we're trying to give you a little more, a little more diversity than just a specific guest talking about one topic. We're going to throw in some other things and try to make it fun for everyone. And even the guest like Claudia West, to me, is not really, her theories touch on what we do, but they overlap a little bit, but they don't completely mesh. So I don't think that we should be what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
I have no idea. But we shouldn't be insular in our thinking. We should allow some outside things, especially when they're lending a lot of the principles of what we do. So we want to give you a vast idea of this area. So
and because there's native plants can be for everyone. One of my gripes, I might even brought this up before too, one of my gripes is that we really kind of pigeonhole ourselves as a native plant community into, hey, it's got to be straight species, it's got to be local ecotype, it's got to be all these things. Well, that's good for some people, but if you're just dipping your toe in to native plants and you don't know all that stuff, and this we've complained about the Facebook groups before. This is what you see a lot happen there is you have someone new who says, I just heard about native plants. I heard someone like Pat Sutton or Dwayne Estes or someone speak about native plants, and I'm really intrigued, but I don't know anything. They go on Facebook, find some stuff, or go online, and then instantly they kind of get kicked out because they aren't following the protocols of some of these really, really strict, diehard native plant people.
I saw one today. Someone was new. They posted a photo of a diseased maple leaf, and they were asking for help.
Yes, yep.
And did you see that post?
I saw the post. I didn't read into it too much.
Yeah. Well, the maple leaf happened to be a Norway maple, which is an invasive and non-native. And the comments were they totally got off the topic. This was someone looking for help, and you had the opportunity to educate, not ridicule, and that's what ended up happening.
Yep.
And then it becomes a circus at that point.
Yeah.
So, and they have to shut off the comments. So,
Yep.
but it's it's we want to be inclusive, and if you're only listening to it has to be all natives, then that's kind of like only listening to one side of a political argument. You're only saying, you're only watching this news channel, or, you want to be broad and then kind of hear all the arguments.
Really, that was part of our side mission is being a native plant nursery. We get to work with so many great nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations too, but a lot of nonprofit organizations who are doing all this great work all across the country, and they're all doing it for different reasons, but those reasons all involve native plants, why we came up with the title Native Plants, Healthy Planet, and we haven't really talked a lot about plants because we're talking about turkeys and deer and fish and God knows what. It's everything. It's native plants kind of control that whole spectrum.
And on the back end, we even see where our customers or our colleagues are getting in touch with people that we've had on as guests. Like we've had one of our customers up in Syracuse reach out and want to get in touch with Marcus Gray from Audubon International about monitoring.
Monarch monitoring.
Monarch monitoring. So it's nice to kind of bring all these groups together, even though it was for different reasons. We're happy that the homeowner can connect with these groups and help, that our customers can collaborate and get great things done.
And even some of these organizations can collaborate together, which a lot of them have been doing already, but they can collaborate together. And even though they may have wildly different goals as their outcomes, they're following the same path to achieve those outcomes.
Yeah.
So
I agree. So,
but before we get into today's topic,
yes,
I guess we should do our segment first.
It's hot.
I'm not gonna get tired listening to that.
I don't think so, friend.
So I have one. I don't know if you have one.
I don't.
All right, I do have one. So walking through the nursery at this time of the year, there's some pretty obvious choices you could make. There's goldenrod, there's asters, there's a lot of things that are in bloom right now that you would tend to see in bloom. But I'm going to throw a curveball out there. I mean, it's something that's blooming at its natural time, but not something that we talk about often. So my choice for that's hot is Baccharis halimifolium. Grounsell tree. So right now that's blooming a kind of cottony-like flower. It's a very soft white bloom. That's a plant, if you're unfamiliar with it, is more of a salt. Technically, in nature, it's a facultative wet species. It's a tall shrub or a small tree. It's like 5 to 12 feet, depending on conditions.
Tolerates some salt spray.
Yeah, it can take salt spray. It's typically a salt marsh, but that plant I've seen growing in cracks of cement. So it's not invasive, or I shouldn't say invasive. It's not aggressive, but it can handle non-salt conditions. We have it growing around the nursery, and I saw it growing around our pond. So it wasn't in, which is fresh water.
And even I was driving around the nursery at like sunset last night, and I saw it growing along the ditch. I'm like, I never noticed that was there before. But
and I don't know if we planted there or it volunteered.
I guess it volunteered. I don't. We plant a lot of stuff all around the nursery, so it's tough to tell what was just kind of blew in and what we did actually put there.
We did plant some of those drainage ditches for NRCS.
Yep.
So and for our own purposes, but I don't know if it was planted or volunteered in, but it looked great, and it just kind of caught my eye, and I'm like, that's probably one thing that if you're a native plant lover and you don't know that plant, hopefully that gives you the chance right now to look it up. And there's a great way to look that up. We're gonna get into that. So.
But before you hit that button, play that music again.
All right.
Two things I just thought of was I was actually at the Pinelands Preservation Alliance on I think it was Tuesday afternoon, and driving out of there, they had I love the goldenrod aster combo together when they kind of overlap, and they had right along their main driveway a great example of that where it was really intermeshed, and like it was almost like you had like bars, and it would just be a bar of gold then a bar of, but like that little in between space where you have some aster flowers mixed with some goldenrod flowers, I think is just so cool.
It's a great time, that late summer, early fall, and you have New York ironweed, and you have all those colors kind of intermingling. And
the other thing is, this is probably only a destination for people in New Jersey, and I'm not telling you to go there and stop, but our seed farm right now, which is on Island Road, right down the street from our nursery, has all kinds of asters blooming, which are cool in their own right. But the one that always stands out, which I have, it's not too far from the high school. My wife was a teacher at the high school, and she would always bring up, "Hey, what's that flower?" Because everyone's asking me what it is, because they know I'm affiliated with this. And it was Helianthus Angustifolius is blooming right now, and it looks like a big yellow cloud. Just off in the distance, is off the road. It's pretty cool. If you're close by to the Columbus area and you just want to cruise down by that road, it's worth the drive.
Actually, Steve asked me this morning, to use the drone and go over top of that. I thought it was a little too windy, but if we can get that, maybe we can post it in the Facebook group. A drone shot over top of that crop, because it does look good. So speaking of Pinelands Preservation Alliance, last weekend, was it last week? No, 2 weekends ago. We did the Pinelands Adventure kayak trip down the Batstow River, which was, wow, it was phenomenal. So that was a gift to me from my fiance for my 50th, and I had never kayaked down the Batstow, and that's have you kayaked?
I think I canoed down there. It was years ago, so every time I drive through that area, I'm like, I really need to come back and canoe around here.
Yeah, it's because they have trips down the Maurice River and the Batstow River. So, but the Batstow was a 4-hour trip, and it was like perfect timing, like the overlap, like you were getting the beginning of fall colors. So you're driving through the pine barrens, and the low bush blueberry and the huckleberry are starting to turn red, and black gum and red maple. And I noticed that the possum haw, viburnum, the berries were starting to go to that lavender color, like in a little bit where they go from lavender to black. But then you still had the end of the flowering season, so there was cardinal flower all along the banks blooming, and it was just like a great mix of fall color and late summer flower, and it was just such a peaceful, because it's limited. They're only doing 25% capacity. It was like you were in the middle of nowhere. We saw one other group the whole.
That sounds really awesome, and it's hard to bring a baby in a kayak. But it's something we're hoping to do in the next couple of years, definitely when he gets a little bigger. That's for sure.
Well, so before we start with our next topic, I have to play the music to end that segment. I never officially ended it.
It's hot.
All right, I was just looking for an excuse.
But so today's today's topic that we're going to talk about is our favorite websites. But we do want to wrap up our favorite books, because we got a lot of really good comments from our listeners about books that they liked, that some of them we actually just kind of forgot about, and others I hadn't even heard before. And then some had even read some of the books we suggested and thought they were really good.
Yeah, there were books that once I saw them posted, I was like, oh, I can't believe we forgot that one. Like, I felt ashamed. And then so many I hadn't heard of, and I kind of think it's funny that our listeners are better read on this topic than I am. Yep. I was like, oh wow, look at you. Like that's I was impressed. But I thought maybe we could talk about, I can't really talk about a lot of the books, but we could mention the books. So Darren Williams, one of our more active members of the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, had a bunch that he mentioned. So 1491 New Revelations of the Americas Before Columbus by Charles C. Mann, which I've never heard of. Tending the Wild, Native American Knowledge and the Management of California's Natural Resources by M. Cat Anderson. That sounds like something I would really like. The Hidden Forest, The Biography of an Ecosystem by John R. Loma.
I think you're close enough.
Okay. And Eager, The Surprising Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter by Ben Goldfarb. Yeah. So that's a nice mix.
Yeah.
I mean, that
would be a good one for my brother because he's like a beaver fanatic, and I think there was like a Netflix special, maybe it's even based off this, that was called like The Secret Life of Beavers that he always is telling me to watch. I think I've watched parts of it, and I don't think I ever finished it. He doesn't listen to this, so he won't know. But we also had Skip Burns chipped in with some of his, and this is one we were embarrassed about because it's written by a friend of ours, and that's Garden Revolution by Larry Weiner.
Yeah, I was really embarrassed that we didn't put that in our original podcast, but we'll fix that because we want to have Larry on the podcast at some point. Hopefully this winter he'll be a guest for us.
Skip also suggested How the Earth Turned Green by Joseph Armstrong, On Human Nature by E.O. Wilson, who wrote the foreword for The Nature of Nature and writes a lot of great nature books.
And actually, Skip was saying that one totally challenged all of his, made him question all of his perspectives.
Yeah. And then another aside here, that's like a great thing, just to challenge how you think of things. One of my favorite classes in college was an environmental ethics class, and it delved into preservationists and conservationists and restorationists and, restoring stuff, which is our field. We're growing plants for restoration. Well, what are you restoring it to? And that kind of just blew my mind because everything I grew up with was like, oh, maybe we aren't doing the right thing. But we're doing something better than maybe doing nothing. But that's up for debate with all these environmental ethicists.
That would be a great roundtable to have maybe like a mitigation banker or someone that's running a preserve or someone that's restoring to discuss. It'd be great to have maybe someone from like the Meadowlands Commission or something like that.
And not to get too far off topic, but really the goal here is to be able to utilize some of these environments without degrading them in any way, shape, or form, and without losing any others. Obviously, that's just not possible. And that's where that whole, if we preserve it, then no one can touch it, and it's always going to be wild, but then you kind of lose that value because no one can see how great it is, and that's why the conservationist comes in. Well, this is why we need to use it, but not destroy it.
Yes.
And then you have the restorations. Well, this is why we need to make more of it so we can use more. It's never
ending.
Yeah,
it's never ending.
And I don't know if there's a right answer, and people can go about that for they have
and they will
for decades.
Yes.
So we had a couple other books. The Hidden Life of Trees, Look Up by Suzanne Simard. And then one last one was recommended by Deborah Rosenthal, and that was The Humane Gardener by Nancy Lawson.
All great choices. So I'm going to have to... There's definitely some on here that piqued my interest. That I'm in the process still of reading the book by Tim Rainer and Claudia West. So once I finish that, I'm planning on picking up one of these.
Yeah. No, it's great to see that there are... Sometimes you forget how many great nature books there are out there. It's nice to see that there's some recommendations because even when you find out how many there are, it's tough to find where you should actually dive in.
But it was nice to see, like, I think it was Skip that went back and looked up and read a Sand Candy Almanac. So it was nice to see that some of the suggestions we threw out there. And that one, to me, is an important one. I know you feel the same way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But anyway, websites.
Yes. So this one was difficult for me because I don't use very many, and the ones that I use for work mostly.
Yeah, and it's the easiest way. It's great to read books. We should always read books, but sometimes if you're new to native plants, you're just finding out about this. Well, your first reaction is to Google it. Yeah. It's not to go to the library or go to you're going online to find the book or you're going to the bookstore. It's, hey, I just heard about this really cool thing. I'm going to Google it and see what's going on. And there's some really, really great resources out there.
Yeah, and some we've talked about before, some we haven't. I know this next one we mentioned, I believe, in our listener episode. So it's plants.usda.gov, which is the USDA plants database. What I love about that one is a lot of times we'll get asked about a native plant that we're unfamiliar with. Do you have this one? If not, do you have a comparable substitute? And we specialize in Northeast wetland stuff. So, obviously there's a whole other world outside of there. There's upland, there's all different areas. So that's my place where I can look to see, hey, where is that plant native to? What's its wetland indicator status? We were just talking about Amsonia hubrichtii because we get a lot of requests for it. When we looked, it's not native anywhere near here, so we wouldn't be able to collect local seed to grow it. So we're not going to add it to our
It's really a great resource. One I use all the time, and then another site that I started using that's really almost like an amplification of that USDA site is the BONAP site, which is it's like Biota North America Project, something like that.
Okay.
But they have a taxonomic data center where you can really go through and where the USDA site breaks stuff down, native, non-native, and then all the way down to a state and then a county level. This still does a county level, but it actually will tell you if it's adventive in the state, which means it's not necessarily naturally present, but it's a native plant to the region, but in that state it's more of a, I don't want to say intruder, invasive, but it's not typically found there. It'll tell you if it's rare in a county, and I've found on some of those debates that I've seen where it's, hey, is this native here? And people will say, oh, if you look online, it says it's native in Pennsylvania, it's native in New York, so it's got to be native in New Jersey. And you can go into that BONAP site and see, oh, well, it's native to Pennsylvania, but only right around Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And it's native to New York, but it's considered adventive, so it's not really naturally found there. So, yeah, maybe like the general logic would be, oh, it's native to the surrounding states, so it's got to be native here too. They just haven't discovered it. But maybe that's not the case.
And it lets you know the population size, because just because it's native to somewhere, if it's such rare occurrence in one space, you're never going to get the seed to produce it commercially, or maybe it's not that easy to produce. So it gives you a lot of great information, and that information changes often. So it's great to have a resource online. I can't remember the name of the book. I can see it from here. The New Jersey, that one.
This New Jersey Wild Plants.
New Jersey Wild Plants, which is that breaks it down by, it will show you basically the size of the community in each county, and tell you where that plant's native. Well, it's not accurate anymore. That book is old enough now where it still says that pawpaw are native all up and down the Delaware River in Burlington County, and that's where we're located. I could tell you there is not one pawpaw, at least not that I've ever encountered. So, those things change. So to have an online resource like that.
But that's a great way. You come across a new plant, you don't necessarily know it, go on the USDA site, go on that BONAP site, and then you can really see if it's native or not, if it's native to your county or not, and then is it a rare plant, or is it an inventive plant, or is it actually something that kind of thrives in your area? And again, depending on your level of native, I'm blanking on a word here, how strict you are with your native plantings. You can say, oh, it's native to Maryland and I'm in New Jersey, so that's close enough. Yeah. Or you can say, hey, it's not native within 3 counties of here, so I'm not even touching it.
I'm not using it.
So it gives you that perspective.
Yeah, which is awesome. The next one I use after plants.usda.gov is more technical to me. So after that, I'll go to wildflower.org, which is the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. And that one's more user-friendly, because if you want more technical details, if you want to know the bloom time, the color, the height, the pollinator, what pollinators it attracts, what it goes well with, they've really worked a lot of that information in there per plant. So if I need more specific detail, if I'm not as familiar with the plant and I'm just looking for a little more, I can always go there and get great information. They'll give light requirements, all that for every native.
Yeah, where it might not give you that county level of nativity, it gives you, in a little bit harder to decipher way, what states it's native to. It's not a map where you can actually look and see, oh, it's native here, here, here. Yeah. At least not that I remember. It gives you a list of the states by their 2-letter code. Yeah. But it gives you so much other information, and even a little bit of, I think it gives you a little bit of planting information as well.
Yeah. So it's a great resource. That's one that definitely I think most of our listeners would probably appreciate.
Yeah. And one I'm going to add on that I didn't actually put on our scripted list was the Missouri Botanical Garden, and that's another one I find when when you search these plants online, and you type in that Latin name or the common name. Usually what pops up is the USDA site. Then you'll have the Ladybird Wildflower site, which is wildflower.org. And then a lot of times that next one is the Missouri Botanicalgarden.org site. And they have very similar to how the Ladybird Johnson site lists it. They kind of list it the same way. And it's sometimes I'll use that one versus another one. They're kind of interchangeable to me. They present a lot of the same information in a similar fashion.
I agree. And you want that information from a source you trust, and that's definitely a very, very trustworthy source. So
yeah. But then the one that I like to use a lot, and from a business base, I refer customers to a lot if they're looking for native plants for their yards, is the Jersey Friendly Yard site, which is just jerseyyards.org, former guests of ours, and
I think episode 5. Yeah, I think episode 5.
But they put a really good job putting together a site that doesn't just list the plants that are native to New Jersey that are traditionally found in the horticultural market, but they also have a little interactive guide that's kind of like a plant this, not that type thing. And it's like they purposely try and trick you into thinking, oh, I didn't know, like you see a Japanese barberry on their plant list. Oh, I didn't know that was a native plant, or I didn't know that was okay. And then you click and it says, oh, don't plant this. Yeah. Instead, plant these other things.
It's a learning tool.
Yeah, they really use it to, like, even things like butterfly bush and other things that are traditionally found in that landscape setting. And they kind of guide you into, hey, these are some native alternatives that you might want to use instead. Yeah.
So, and speaking of education, one of the ones I like to refer people to is DukeFarms.org. Mm-hmm. Duke Farms, another former guest, episode 2. They have a lot of great educational material, like just printable stuff if you're walking through for identification and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's really helpful. Plus, Eagle Cam. It's a win-win. You know, I don't know that it's up yet. It was supposed to be.
I think they just put it up. Okay. Within the last month. Yeah. I saw it was live.
Because I know it was going to be offline till at least August, till nesting season was over, and then they could fix it. So if that's back up, well, it's not nesting season. So
yeah. But I think when I tuned in briefly, there was still an eagle there.
All right.
So
awesome.
Another website that I'll reference, not as much as the other ones, but on occasion is actually the Audubon.org site. And they have a native plant finder where you type in your zip code, and it'll tell you the best plants for birds that are native to your zip code.
That's great.
And so I was looking up earlier, and I forget what birds were native to, but it was one of the trees was Ficus grandifolia, the American beech. And then it had a whole list of birds that really liked that species of tree. So it was kind of cool. And it had a whole list of trees. That's just the one I remember off the top of my head.
Well, and it's funny because the native planting I've been doing at my fiance's house is for birds. Mm-hmm. You know, we've been planting for birds. So that's a fantastic resource for that. Another one, it's another former guest that we refer people to a lot, is Xerces.org. They have a milkweed seed finder and many regional publications. They have a lot of educational stuff on there. Like, you could get lost for days.
And when I was even looking at their site earlier, it said, I clicked on the Mid-Atlantic region. You can't boil it down to like a state or county level on their site, but you can go on and say, hey, I want to look up stuff that's pertinent to the Mid-Atlantic region, like we would. And it looked like they were starting to rebuild that site, but they have a whole list of guides of, hey, these are things you need to do if you want to plant native plants. These are plants you should look at. Or if you're seeding, or if you're doing these kind of things, there's just a huge list of publications they have that can guide you through a lot of this process.
I used to keep a printed copy at my desk, actually. Just the pollinator reference material in there is unparalleled. I don't know if you're going to find it anywhere else that they have on there. So that's a great one.
From a work perspective, we used to use that milkweed seed finder a lot when we first started with Marcus Graham monarchs in the rough. Yeah. And we were trying to source local ecotype seed from all over the country. That was a really good resource to help find some of these sources for seed that we didn't already have connections in. We had connections in the Southeast. We had connections in the northern Midwest. California was kind of like the desert Southwest was definitely a hole for us. We didn't know where to even start looking. And in Pacific Northwest, same thing. So that kind of gave us a couple leads to go and look for that kind of stuff.
And it's different in different areas of the country. I know for us, the Northeast, what a native plant is can be a relatively small area. I remember speaking with a a native plant nursery owner in Texas, and he goes, "Oh, native for us could be, a 3-state local ecotype could be a 3-state region for us." Mm-hmm. So I was like, I didn't even really think about that. He goes, "It's a lot different in the Northeast than it is in the Southwest." So I'm like, yeah, gotcha.
And one more site, and I think this is even a listener of ours who runs this site, is actually the wildseedproject.net. And I know we have listeners that are from the Northeast, specifically New Hampshire, but we've also had listeners in Maine and Vermont and all that area. Well, this is a group that's actually out of Maine, and gives a lot of talks, and also has a lot of resources about how to start native plants from seed and how to plant native gardens and how to do all this stuff. So I'm sure that there's sites like this I don't want to say I'm sure. I would guess there's sites like this for most areas in the country.
I would hope.
Like if you're in the Midwest, there's probably a site just like this that's more pertinent to the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's just finding that site. Sometimes like the Google really controls what you can and can't see. Sometimes it's hard to find some of this stuff because it's someone who really knows plants might not know as much about search engine optimization, and it struggles to bring their website to the top. But that's for folks in the Northeast. That's especially if you're just getting into it or you're novice or intermediate level, great resource to grab a hold of and learn more. Yeah. If you're in that area and you're at advanced level, hey, maybe think about helping them out to rise all the boats.
I agree. So I think we gave you 9 or 10 really great examples of websites that can help you for native plants in your area, outside of your area, for pollinators, for birds. We tried to cover a few different aspects of what you would be looking them up for. So between those, you could pretty much get just about all the information you could need about any one particular native plant. But we want to know what you use as well. So when we post this on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook page, please comment. Let us know what you're using. Maybe there's one.
Let's be honest, Fred. We want to know what we missed.
Yeah, because we
there might be things that we could use that we just don't even know about. That would be awesome.
That would be great.
That's a situation where sharing is a really, really good thing.
Sometimes you're just not in that headspace, like with the books. Like, I can't believe we forgot Larry's book.
And that reminds me, I actually forgot something else I was going to add to this list.
Go ahead.
And that was Facebook. Facebook isn't as much as we rag on it, and some of these groups, they're an excellent resource.
They are.
Particularly one that I go on is the Native Plants of the Northeast. And while I hate to see people who are like dipping their toe in, kind of get pushed out really quick and dismissed really quickly, there's a lot of really, really good stuff on there too.
I'm really impressed with how quickly answers
I learn a lot.
Like I'll see a picture and I'll think about it for a second and I'll go to type and I'm like, whoa, there's already 3 responses and they're correct.
It's like, I'm finally going to get a chance to contribute here, and then 3 people beat me to it.
Yeah, it happens all the time. But the amount of knowledge in that group, if you can wade through some of the negative stuff, there's a ton of positive stuff. Yeah. So,
and if you're in one of those groups, and try and keep things positive, and try and help other people keep things positive as well. I know Native Plants in the Northeast, there's another one, Pollinator Friendly Yards. There are a ton of industry people in those groups.
Yes.
I've talked to them at trade shows. I see their names when they're posting stuff. I'm like, I know who you are, but I don't think a lot of other people know who you are and how much of an expert you are at this. There's folks from Larry Weiner's in Associates on there.
Yeah.
There's folks from Earn Seed. There's folks from Prairie Moon. There's folks from Prairie Nursery. Yeah. I've seen people from Pizos, people from North Creek. There's
Ernst,
people from all over the place that are in these groups, and a lot of them are. I would describe them as experts. I don't know if they would describe themselves as experts, and they're trying to help out. And you have people dismissing their information and sometimes deleting their information and blocking their information when they're some of the brightest in the professional field, and they're kind of getting washed away. There's a lot of people to help you there, and there's a lot of people who might think they know more than they actually do.
Marcus Gray was banned from a group.
Marcus Gray was telling me he was banned from a bunch of butterfly groups, and and I'm not going to go into specifics why. In my mind, he didn't do anything wrong, but there's just a lot of people who disagreed with his whole mission.
Yeah,
and enough that he was blocked and had comments blocked and posts blocked from
that just blows my
a lot
mind.
of these groups. And he's been, in my mind, one of the most knowledgeable people we've had on this podcast. So
we couldn't stump him.
Yeah,
we could not stump him.
Yeah.
We tried. It got to me. At some point in that podcast, it became the stump Marcus mission, and it was impossible.
Yeah.
So,
but back to what we were talking about. Facebook can be a great resource. A lot of these groups are awesome. It gives you way more information from people who are actually doing this stuff than a nursery ever could.
Yeah, I agree.
Like a nursery isn't going to spend like even half an hour with you on the phone, kind of walking you through how you're going to seed something or how you're going to grow something.
It's impossible.
Well, on there you can look it up and find some stuff.
Yeah.
But and I understand why people get frustrated. I've seen, I don't even know how many pictures of now I'm blanking on the plant. Is it pokeweed?
Oh,
I forget.
Yeah.
There's one plant, it just keeps coming up, and they're like, oh, is this native? And I could understand why people get frustrated, because how many times is this going to come up? But
no,
it's we got to keep it friendly and encourage people to join this, because it's, as Doug Tallamy said, Dr. Doug Tallamy in his book, this is our best hope. We need native plants to kind of spread and become normalized in the everyday landscape rather quickly, within the next 30 years, or it's just going to keep, our landscapes are just going to keep degrading, our environment's going to keep degrading until we can kind of switch this paradigm and make these normal. And
it's going to degrade faster and faster and faster.
We don't have the luxury of being able to push people out of this. We need to get as many people on board for as far as they want to go.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to encourage planting invasives. We want to definitely discourage that kind of stuff, but if they want to plant cultivars and that's going to get them in and get them to the next step,
they'll do 70-30.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Yeah. I'll take it.
Even if they just want to plant 10 things in their garden, just to get them started. And once they see how beneficial it is, and they notice that's the one thing that had bees on it, or that's the one thing that had butterflies on it, and nothing else did.
As long as I'm not seeing barberry or all of those things, pears and that, it's there's good choices. Even if they're only planting a couple natives, but making good choices on the non-natives, that's a huge win. I feel too. So I'll take all of it.
Yeah, we need as many people on this ship as we can. We can't be in a position where we're kicking people off yet.
Yes,
there may be a point. I hope we get to a point where there's a point where we can say, hey, no, we don't want you guys. But at this point, we need everybody we can to start preaching this message and slowly working their way over to becoming a little bit stricter and stricter with their native plantings.
I would love to see the rose garden at the White House be a native plant garden.
Oh, yeah. They're replanting it. We might be able to put in an application for a design. And
because it was boxwoods getting put in and roses, but I would love to see that be a native plant garden. How awesome would that be?
Oh, it would have been incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see it yet.
I don't know if we're going to see it.
But anyway, that wraps it up. Thank you for joining us today. Fran, I'm glad we kept this not like the first debate. More like, I guess we were even better than the last night, but we didn't interrupt each other at all.
No,
really.
Not at all. Not at all.
But we hope you enjoyed listening about which websites we enjoy. Thank you guys for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet. We're excited to hear from you. Again, this is presented by Pinelands Nursery.
I would love to give a huge thank you to Stephen Marr for contributing our theme music. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery. Not a lot of interaction on Twitter. We keep getting more and more followers, but not a lot of interaction. Maybe I need to do a better job at interacting on that one too. Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ. Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. We now have a question and answer line, which has still unused. We're waiting for the first person to call in.
Even a prank call.
I would take a prank call. We will play those on the Buzz in future episodes of the Buzz. So you can call us at 215-346-6189. Ask us a question or leave us a comment. If we pick your question or comment, we'll play it on a future episode and answer it or respond to it. It can even be negative. Be the person that left us the 1-star review. Defend it. Come out of the woodwork. And let's not forget the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook page, or Facebook group, I should say. I would love to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, you can listen to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out at Apple Podcasts. That's where you can leave 5-star reviews.
Yes, 5-star only.
Fewer 1-star, more 5-star. You can also listen to us on Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher. I've started listening to us on Spotify a little bit more. Not that I listen to ourselves talk that often, but when I play it, sometimes I'll put it on Spotify. Give us a little bump.
I always listen on Apple. I listen to every episode because I'm always just curious about the editing, and I'm glad I did because we did have, and I'm sure some of you heard it, we had one episode where I had a joke which, in retrospect, I realized wasn't a great joke, and I promised I would take it out. And for some reason, that edit got lost, and I'm listening to it, and I heard the joke, and I freaked out and had to edit it and re-upload a new version. So I always kind of listen. Do you think one of our competitor, I'm going to change the subject, do you think one of our competing podcasts left the 1-star review?
Oh, man. We could start a podcast war. I know radio wars are a thing. Or podcast wars are a thing.
They could be.
So,
I don't know. I would love us not to be a thing because we're all trying to complete the same mission.
And we're getting off of our conclusion here, but that's another thing. Going to roundtables, we want to actually have a dual episode, not dual, like dual at the same time. Have another podcast or multiple podcasts all kind of record at once and just have a roundtable discussion about podcasting about native plants and how people got into it and maybe even how we got into it. You guys know how we got into it. We don't need to talk about that.
We talk about it all the time. But I thought about that. I was like, oh, could it be one of our competitors? I
don't know. It's everyone's tense between Corona and the election. Everyone's on edge right now. So maybe it was they watched that first debate, then they listened to our podcast, got so upset they just had to do it.
I did think that it's possible that it could have been an ex-girlfriend. I wouldn't,
on your side, not my side.
On my side, it could be possible.
This is the only way they can get through to you.
It might be.
They're blocked on every other facet of your life. They can't. There's restraining orders. You're blocked on Facebook. The only way they can get to you is by leaving a 1-star review.
1-star review.
That's gotta be. I take back all the pheasant and leprechaun stuff. It could be that.
It could definitely. You know what? I wish I could say I was only joking.
But going back to the ending, you can even ask Alexa to play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. Thanks again, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in again. We'll see you next time. Wow, did my voice just...
Oh, yeah.
Next time. We will see you again next time.
We did so good. We kept it together for so long.
Until the end. Wah, wah, wah. Until next time, everyone, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.